Hello and welcome to Sleepy Scientist. I'm glad you're here, whether you've had a long day, a busy mind, or you simply love falling asleep to the sound of science. Tonight we journey to a place where time bends under sunlight, where noon doesn't just arrive, it hovers directly above you. A place where shadows vanish, not from magic, but from geometry. You're standing at the invisible belt of the earth, watching your shadow slip away beneath your feet like it's been erased by the sky itself. Imagine the warmth on your skin, not the angled warmth of morning or the golden kiss of sunset, but something purer, more vertical. The sun sits right above your head, like a spotlight from the heavens, burning evenly across the landscape. There's something almost eerie about it. The buildings don't lean into long shadows. The trees don't stretch away from the light. Even you right now could turn around and not see your shadow following you. It feels like standing inside a giant sundial at the exact moment when time forgets how to cast itself. What would it feel like to live every day beneath that unwavering gaze? Would it change how you sleep, how you breathe, how you think about morning and night? In places like these, you step into a strange pocket of the earth where vertical light rules and everything else obeys. But before we sink into this sunny mystery, let me gently remind you, if you enjoy these sleepy explorations, I'd be so grateful if you gave the video a little like and tap that subscribe button. It helps more sleepy scientists like you find their way here, and it means I can keep making more of these journeys for you now. And with that, let's slip quietly into this place where shadows disappear. You feel it before you see it. The absence of shadow tickles your skin. No matter which direction you face, the sun spills down on you equally. It isn't low and golden, it's high and quiet. The trees don't cast sleepy streaks across the sidewalk. Instead, their leaves quiver in every direction at once, each one drinking in the light with no competition. There's no left or right to the sunlight, just down. Straight down. It's almost as if the sun has decided to perch directly above you, like an observant bird, unmoving, omnipresent, offering no angle to hide in. You look at your feet, expecting the comforting silhouette of your own body. But there's hardly anything there. Just a faint smudged outline tucked right beneath your toes. And it's not just strange to see. It feels different. The air warms evenly. Your shoulders, your neck, your head, everything absorbs the light equally. There's no tilt of your body that creates relief, no half. In the shade, half in the sun. You are completely illuminated. That moment of perfect vertical sunlight is called solar noon, but here near the equator, it becomes something more than a passing moment. It is a weighty pause in time, a place where the sun takes its time, sitting down for lunch like it owns the sky. In most places on Earth, solar noon means the sun is highest in the sky, but still angled maybe 45 degrees, maybe 60. But here the angle shrinks. 80 degrees. 85. Then for a breathless instant, 90 degrees. Zenith. A perfect right angle between sun and land. And when the sun hits that zenith, well, everything changes. Shadows don't stretch anymore, they curl underneath. Buildings don't lean, they stare upward. Even trees seem caught mid-reach, unsure which direction to grow. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to stand directly under the sun's gaze? Not metaphorically, literally. It's a question of light, yes, but also of emotion. Would it make you feel exposed? Free? Would it make the world feel flatter, calmer, brighter? Or would it be just a little unsettling, like stepping into a mirror with no reflection? And what happens to your sense of time when shadows can't help you mark it? Normally, you can feel the day progress as the angle of light changes those shifting shadows that lengthen, stretch, soften as the sun moves across the sky. But here in the brief window of shadowlessness, time gets quiet. It pauses. like the world takes a breath. This isn't just poetry, it's physics too. Shadow length is determined by the angle of the sun above the horizon. At 45 degrees, a person 5 feet tall will cast a 7-foot-long shadow. But at 90 degrees, that shadow nearly disappears, shrinking to just the soles of your feet. It's not gone exactly, but it's hiding. Pressed underneath you, whisper thin and shapeless. In these rare conditions, sundials become confused. Solar panels generate energy more efficiently, but at slightly different angles than designed. Cameras struggle with exposure. Architects rethink how they orient their buildings. And your brain might lose a cue. It didn't realize it was using the long, slow march of the sun's shadow, helping you feel the passage of time. Even birds and insects behave differently when overhead sun becomes a pattern. And we'll get to them later. For now, just imagine walking a quiet street and noticing that nothing casts long shadows. It's like being in a dream, an illuminated dream. Now close your eyes if you haven't already. Feel the balance, feel the symmetry. Let your breath rise and fall like the equatorial sun. Equal parts day and night, high and low. You're standing in the stillest part of the spinning earth, the line where the planet twirls, but you hardly feel it. The equator doesn't just divide hemispheres, it divides how light touches the world. And in that perfect moment of shadowlessness, you are nowhere and everywhere. Timeless, weightless, just a gentle heartbeat beneath the sun. Step a little closer now. You've felt the absence of shadows, but where in the world can you live beneath such a sky every day? Come with me to a city stitched so closely to the equator that it practically straddles the very seam of the earth. This is Quito, Ecuador. Perched high in the Andes Mountains, 9 to 350 feet, or nearly 2,850 meters above sea level, it's one of the highest capital cities on Earth. But what makes Quito even more fascinating is not just its altitude, it's the latitude almost 0 degrees. Just a few short kilometers north of the equator line. Can you feel that contradiction? The city floats up in the sky, but it's grounded on the Earth's midline. It is both elevated and centered, both close to the heavens and stitched to the very belly of the planet. When you breathe here, the air is thin, but the light is rich, straight, steady. Quito is one of the few major cities where you can truly live under the noonday sun in its most vertical form. It's not a myth or a moment, it's a rhythm. Twice a year, the sun climbs to its zenith and looks directly down on the city. You can mark the days when shadows disappear. Locals sometimes call them dias sin sombra, or shadowless days. It's almost as if the city blinks, once in March, again in September. The sun climbs higher and higher through the seasons, and then right at the equinox it arrives directly overhead. On those days, something changes in the streets. You might not notice it. At first, your steps feel a little brighter, your eyes squint a little deeper, but eventually you look down and realize your shadow has vanished. Not gone forever, just tucked beneath you like a sleeping pet. Flat, invisible, silent. And what does this do to the people who live here? To sleep patterns, to daily rhythms, to the way you feel. Time move. Let's pause and ask yourself, if your world had no true seasons, would your body still remember how to feel? Spring or fall? If the light above you was always generous and near, would you sleep differently? Dream differently? That's the quiet tension of Quito. Despite its height and grandeur, it's never in a hurry. There are no long winters, no short summer nights. Each day is almost the same length, roughly 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of night. Forever on a loop, like a soft pendulum swinging with no extremes. The equator brings this evenness, this stillness of day length. But the altitude brings something else: intensity. Because even though Quito's position on the equator gifts it those shadowless days, its elevation cranks the sunlight into a sharper tool. Up here, the atmosphere is thinner. There's less air to filter the ultraviolet light, and the sun's rays arrive with greater force. On some afternoons, it feels like the sun is only inches away. The heat isn't sweltering. Quito's temperature stays fairly mild year-round, with daytime highs averaging around 66 to 70 degrees, about 19 to 21 degrees, but the light is strong, bold, unfiltered. It presses on your skin in a way that feels more golden than hot. It's no coincidence that many of Quito's colonial buildings have thick walls, narrow balconies, and shaded courtyards. The people here have learned to live with light that comes from above, not at an angle. They've built places to slip into shadow, to let the light skim over the surface without penetrating too deep. It's a dance between visibility and invisibility. Even the sky feels closer. The clouds puff like cotton just above the rooftops, and on some days they form dramatic columns that seem to rise from the earth itself. The sunlight strikes them from directly above, painting their tops in white brilliance, while their bottoms remain soft and gray. In this vertical world, everything wears a crown of brightness. You start to notice the stillness in the movement. The sun rises fast here, no long, slow, golden hours. The day gets to the point quickly. Sun up, sun over, sun down, efficient, balanced, reliable. And that does something to you. Your circadian rhythm, your internal clock starts to hum in a different key. In places far from the equator, your body must constantly adjust. Longer days in summer, shorter ones in winter. But here, the tempo remains. 12 and 12, light and dark in equilibrium. Still, there's something quietly challenging about it. The absence of long twilight can rob your brain of transition time. The gentle winding down we associate with evening light. The slow fade into night is shorter here. The sun disappears quickly. You might feel like day turns to night in a snap. A light switch, not a dimmer. Some people love it. Others feel caught off guard. So what do? You adjust, you adapt. You start to sense the cues in other ways, the way the birds fall silent, the way the air smells cooler, the way city lights flicker on all at once. In Quito, your relationship with the sun becomes direct, intimate, immediate. And as you lay down to rest in this high equatorial city, you carry with you the memory of standing at the center of the spinning earth, the feeling of light that falls straight from the sky, and the strange, beautiful truth that time, though always ticking, feels softer, rounder, and a little more symmetrical here. Look up now. Let your gaze follow the arc of the sun in your mind's eye. Picture it climbing steadily across the sky, not in a swooping curve, but in a taller, narrower path. You're standing in a place where twice each year, the sun doesn't just pass overhead, it stands there directly above you for a fleeting perfect moment. This celestial event has a name, the zenith passage. It sounds like something mystical, doesn't it? A kind of solar ceremony. And in a way it is. The zenith passage happens only in the narrow band between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, the tropics. This is the solar stage. And if your home falls within this tropical belt, you're part of a unique club, the places where the sun can sit exactly overhead. But here's the twist: it only happens twice a year, and never on the solstices. Instead, the zenith passage dances around the equinoxes, when day and night are nearly equal. It marches northward after the March equinox, then south again after June, painting a slow figure 8 across the sky as the months tick by. You could even think of it as the sun leaning in for a quick kiss, just 2 kisses a year, before drifting away again. Singapore, for example, feels this twice, around March 21st, and again near September 23rd. Nairobi too, and Panama City, and of course Quito. And on those special days for just a short while, around solar noon, the sun aligns with such vertical precision that shadows seem to sink into the earth. Poles cast no slant. People appear strangely flat-footed, with no shadow trailing behind them. It's as though the sun has erased the third dimension. This brief moment was once deeply sacred. Ancient civilizations didn't just notice the zenith passage, they honored it. Some built entire stone monuments just to capture it. Others timed planting cycles or religious ceremonies to it. And some, like the ancient Maya, used it to mark the heartbeat of the year. Have you ever wondered how people thousands of years ago could align temples and pyramids so precisely with the sun? This is part of that story. Take the Maya of Mesoamerica. They were exceptional astronomers, not in the telescope and lab coat sense, but in the lie on your back and watch the sky for decades sense. They saw patterns where others saw light. They noticed that on 2 particular days of the year, the sun didn't cast shadows from vertical columns. Instead, sunlight poured straight down temple stairwells, filled courtyards from top to bottom, and marked key places on carved walls. At Copan in Honduras, the Maya built a temple called the Temple of the Sun, and during zenith passage the sun aligns perfectly with stone markers so precisely that a shaft of light enters narrow openings and illuminates carvings hidden deep within. The message was clear. This moment matters. Imagine being there hundreds of years ago, standing beside a carved altar as the light pours directly from the sky into a sacred chamber. No flashlights, no electricity, just sun geometry and reverence. The light becomes more than light, it becomes language. Zenith passage wasn't just a calendar cue, it was a cosmic signal. A reminder that time is circular, not linear, that seasons pass not with snow or leaves, but with light itself. The Hawaiians had a name for this event too, Lahaina Noon, a poetic name for a blinding moment. Even though Hawaii lies just outside the exact equator, its islands still experience the zenith passage, and on that day, lampposts cast no shadows, and the sun seems to hover right at the peak of the dome of sky. Think about that for a moment. What if the sky had no curve for a day? What if the dome above you flattened just for a breath, so the sun could press itself directly downward? It's a moment of celestial intimacy. Sky and land whispering in alignment. Scientists today still track zenith passage not just for curiosity, but for calibrating instruments. Satellite alignments, solar panel adjustments, even precise timekeeping can benefit from understanding when and where the sun will be exactly overhead. And yet you here now can feel it too without a single equation. You know that feeling when you walk through sunlight and it warms only one side of your body, that subtle tilt of heat. During zenith passage, that sensation vanishes. Your body is bathed equally, its symmetrical warmth, as if nature hit the balance button. But for all its cosmic choreography, zenith passage is oddly quiet. No fireworks, no birds taking flight, just light steady and full. It's so easy to miss unless you're looking for it. So ask yourself, how many sunrises and sunsets have you watched? But how few solar noons have you ever paused at midday, tilted your head skyward, and wondered if you were part of this ancient rhythm? Would you notice if your shadow suddenly disappeared? The next time you're near the equator, find a tall stick, something straight and slender. Plant it upright in the ground. Wait for solar noon. Watch. The shadow will grow shorter and shorter, and then for a moment, it will simply dissolve. You'll know then that the earth and sun are in perfect conversation. You're just listening in. Now that you've felt the thrill of that fleeting zenith passage, let's linger a little longer in what it truly means to live beneath such a sun. not for a moment, but for a life. In this strip of the world between the tropics, people wake up each morning knowing that the sun will rise quickly, almost urgently, not with the dramatic stretch of light across the horizon, but like a theater spotlight being flipped on. You blink, and suddenly it's day. And by noon, that day is at full volume. The sun isn't lounging to the east or west, it's climbing a narrow staircase straight up, stopping right above you and pressing gently firmly on everything. Roofs, trees, foreheads. It's not just vertical, it's personal. You walk down the street and you notice how evenly the light lays itself across the sidewalk. There's no dramatic relief, no diagonal shadows slicing through the alley. Everything is honest under this kind of light. It doesn't hide. Have you ever thought about how you tilt your face toward the sun in most parts of the world, how you lean into its warmth? That instinct doesn't work quite the same way here. Because here the light finds you. It taps your crown, your shoulders, your cheeks. Not from an angle, but from directly above. It changes how people live. In places where the sun is never far from vertical. Singapore, Nairobi, Kampala. Jakarta, you'll find architecture adapted to protect against it. Roofs are often wide and overhanging. Windows come with deep shades. Awnings stretch farther than you'd expect, not to block low-angled morning or evening rays, but to shield against the relentless midday blaze that comes from above. Even clothing shifts with the sun. Light fabrics, wide-brimmed hats. In some cultures, you'll see parasols as everyday accessories, not decorative but tactical. A portable shadow. But here's the paradox. The heat isn't always scorching. In fact, many equatorial cities are surprisingly mild. Why? Because their elevation tempers the sun's fury. Cities like Quito, sitting high in the Andes, enjoy a kind of temperate equatorial balance, hot light, cool air. It's the angle that stays intense, not always the temperature. Still, that vertical sun changes more than just comfort. It alters perception. When light comes from above, the world flattens visually. Photographers know this too well. Midday light is harsh and even. Faces lose their shadows and definition. Landscapes appear flat, depthless. That's why most photographers chase the golden hour sunlight that slants, softens, and shapes. But if you live in the tropics, the golden hour is brief, sometimes just 15 minutes before sunset. So you learn to notice other textures, the shimmer of heat rising from pavement, the blur of clouds that gather like vaporous umbrellas just before afternoon rain. You look up more often because that's where the story is told, and you feel it in your body too. Your circadian rhythm, that internal timekeeper, adjusts to the certainty of light. In temperate zones, your rhythm stretches and contracts with the seasons. Long summer days, short winter ones. But here it's steady. Nearly every day brings 12 hours of daylight and 12 of night. Always within a few minutes. This regularity gives your body a rhythm drumbeat. Sleep researchers believe that equatorial light conditions create fewer disturbances in melatonin cycles. Your body knows when to rest, knows when to rise. It doesn't have to second-guess the sky. But what happens when the sun is too consistent? Some people say it makes the days blur together, too similar, too predictable. Others say it's calming, like living in a song that never loses tempo. No sharp crescendos, no minor chords, just one long, soothing melody. And yet even in this sun-rich landscape, not everything thrives under the direct gaze of the sun. Plants with sensitive leaves will angle themselves carefully. Human skin, especially pale skin, learns quickly how to hide. And those without cover, they get creative. Shade becomes precious. Midday becomes sacred pause. In many equatorial regions, life slows down at noon. You'll see fewer people on the street. Shop doors may close briefly. It's not always a siesta, like in Mediterranean countries, but there's a hush, a breath. You might call it nature's curfew. You sit in a cafe, and the ceiling fans turn lazily. The light pours in from above, but the awning protects you. And for a moment, there's peace, a stillness born of too much brightness. So ask yourself this: if you lived every day with that light pressing gently on your crown, how would it change the pace of your life? Would you slow down? Rise earlier? Sleep more deeply? It's something few people outside the tropics consider. The quality of light changes not just the shape of shadows, but the very shape of time. When light doesn't come from the side, it doesn't move as dramatically. The passage of hours becomes less cinematic, more subtle. And maybe that's the real magic of living beneath a vertical sun. It softens your sense of urgency. It teaches you that not all motion is visible, that sometimes things happen even when shadows don't shift, that the sun can rise above you without rushing, and that you can rise with it, not chasing, just being. By now, you've likely grown accustomed to that curious sensation, the way vertical sunlight flattens the world. But let's talk about the strangest side effect of all what happens when shadows go missing. It begins with something small. You're walking along a stone path, and your eyes expect to see your body outlined beside you. But nothing appears. The shadow, if there is one, is crumpled directly beneath your feet, reduced to a blur. And in that moment, you start to notice a quiet absence, a missing visual cue, something you've always relied on without knowing it. Shadows, after all, are storytellers. They whisper the time of day, hint at where the sun is hiding, bend with the shape of the land. They give corners their depth trees, their drama, and faces their emotion. Take them away, and the world turns oddly neutral. So what happens when shadows disappear for real? First, your tools begin to misbehave. Imagine a sundial, an ancient clock of light and shadow. It's one of the simplest and oldest ways humans have tracked time, a stone or metal gnomon casting a shape across a numbered circle. But here, near the equator during zenith, moments that shape vanishes. Just when the sun is highest, right when you'd want to mark the time, most precisely the dial goes blank. The shadow slips under the gnomon, folding itself so neatly that it offers no direction. Time quite literally becomes unreadable. Even solar panels, those modern harvesters of light, have to adjust their angle carefully in equatorial zones. You might think having the sun directly above is ideal, but it's not always that simple. Solar panels rely on a steady incident angle to maximize energy capture. When the sun is perfectly vertical, panels must be tilted just right, or else they lose efficiency. Too much light from directly above can actually become too flat for peak energy collection. Then there's architecture. In most parts of the world, buildings are designed with slanted shadows in mind. Window overhangs stretch outward to block the low rays of morning and evening. But in the equatorial zone, those shadows don't stretch, they puddle. They cluster tightly around the base of a building, offering less shade where it's needed. Architects here have to think in terms of vertical light. Roofs often flare outward, creating deep overhangs. Breezeways replace narrow corridors. Courtyards sink into the earth to offer shelter, not from wind or rain, but from light itself. It's a subtle reimagining of space. In shadowless places, you design with the sun, not against it. Even your perception of depth begins to shift. Artists and cinematographers have long known that shadows are what give an image its three-dimensional feeling. Without shadows, faces flatten. Landscapes lose contour. So imagine walking through a city like Singapore or Quito during the zenith hour, where streets are bright but strangely muted. People seem to hover slightly untethered by shadow. Buildings glow but lack weight. It's as if someone turned off the depth setting on the world. And that's not just visual, it's psychological. Shadows give us a subconscious sense of orientation. They tell us where we are in relation to the sun, how far something is from a wall, whether a step is shallow or deep. When shadows are missing, the brain compensates. But for some people, it can feel disorienting, even eerie. Ask yourself, if you walked into a room where nothing cast a shadow, would you feel calm or unsettled? There's something ghost-like about it. Not scary exactly, just unfamiliar. Like when fog erases the horizon or snow dulls all sound. You're not in danger, you're just somewhere else. In equatorial places, you learn to navigate differently. You look not for shadows, but for glare. You step where the sun reflects off stone, not where it hides. Your eyes adjust. You become a new kind of tracker, one who sees light as texture, not as shape. Even animals notice. Some species of birds, especially those who prey from the sky, use shadows on the ground to spot movement. In high noon conditions, they must rely on other signals. Ground animals, in turn, use shadows to hide or track predators. When there are none, it changes behavior. Flight patterns shift. Nesting strategies evolve. In a very quiet way, the absence of shadow rewrites the rules of life. But perhaps the most poetic loss is the metaphorical one. Shadows have always stood for mystery, for duality, for the parts of ourselves we don't fully see. When they vanish, even briefly, we're left with light in its purest form, bright, unfiltered, complete. It's a rare thing to experience such exposure in nature. No hidden corners, no soft edges. Just you, the light, and the earth standing still. It makes you ask strange questions. Without shadows, what tells the story of your day? What breaks up the hours? What gives your path its rhythm? Could you learn to read time by brightness alone? Could you feel the difference between 11:45 and 12:15 by the warmth on your forehead or the way the air seems to still? Maybe you could. After a while. Because light this direct doesn't just erase shadow, it rewrites perspective. And when you live in that space, even for a little while, you start to wonder how much of your world is shaped not by what you see, but by what is cast behind it. And so, in this strange, bright hour, without a single shape trailing you, you keep walking lighter than usual. Unanchored, but never lost. As you drift further into this sun-steeped journey, it's time to ask, what does all this shadowless light do to sleep? Because even when your eyes are closed, your body is listening to the rhythms of the earth, to the whispers of the sun, to the gentle tick of time. And nowhere is this more quietly powerful than at the equator, where light and dark divide the day evenly like two dancers taking turns. 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of night, again and again, like a lullaby that never changes its tempo. This symmetry may seem simple, even forgettable, but your body takes it very seriously. You see, buried deep inside you, nestled in your brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus, is your circadian clock, a biological rhythm that controls when you sleep, wake, eat, and dream. It thrives on cues, and one of its loudest conductors is light. When the sun rises at the same time every morning and sets at the same time every night, your circadian system doesn't have to guess. There's no confusion, no recalibrating with the seasons. The script stays the same. Over and over, it's like your body is humming along to a metronome it doesn't even know is there. And here at the equator, that metronome is remarkably steady. In higher latitudes, the body struggles to keep up. Winter days can be stingy with light, just a few pale hours, and the brain begins to slip into seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. Melatonin levels rise too early, serotonin dips, and your mood, focus, and sleep all get tangled in the haze. Then in summer, long evenings of lingering light confuse your sleep drive. The sun says it's still day, but your body is begging for rest. But here, near the equator, the sun's story is consistent. The Zeitgeber, a word that literally means time giver, never skips a beat. Your melatonin, the hormone that tells you when to sleep, becomes beautifully rhythmic. It rises shortly after sunset as the warm glow fades quickly into night, and with no long twilight to delay it, your body doesn't hesitate. It listens. It softens. You feel sleepy right on time. Then around dawn, as the sun returns, not gradually, but boldly, melatonin declines. Cortisol, the waking hormone, takes over. You stretch, you yawn, and the day begins again, right on cue. It's easy to take this for granted until you live elsewhere somewhere with jet-lagged seasons or shifting clocks. Here, the consistency of equatorial light becomes a quiet superpower. But does everyone respond the same? Not quite. Because while nature provides the rhythm, culture sets the schedule. In some equatorial cities, people still rise early and wind down with the sun. Shops open at dawn. Children walk to school in golden light. Meals are served with the rhythm of day and night. But in others, especially big bustling cities, electric lights stretch the evening phones, glow into the night, and the natural order gets pushed aside. Your body may want to sleep by 8:30 or 9 p.m., but the city hums on until midnight. The result, circadian tug-of-war. Even in paradise, you can fall out of step. This raises an interesting question. If light is so reliable near the equator, why do some people still struggle to sleep? Part of the answer lies in temperature. In many tropical places, the daytime heat doesn't dissipate quickly after sunset. The warm air lingers, wrapping you in a soft, sticky cocoon. Your core temperature, which needs to drop to initiate sleep, may resist cooling down. So even though the darkness says, sleep, your body says not yet. Airflow becomes crucial. Fans open windows, night breezes. The architecture responds as it always does to light high ceilings, slatted vents, thin walls designed to breathe. Even the choice of bedding shifts: light cotton sheets, mosquito nets that flutter in the warm dark. And then there's sound. Equatorial nights are rarely silent. The insects, the frogs, the distant drums of rain. It's a lullaby for some, a distraction for others. You hear life pulsing in the dark. It reminds you the night is not empty. It is inhabited. But light above all remains the anchor. Some researchers even suggest that equatorial light exposure is protective against sleep disorders. Regular exposure to bright natural light during the day improves sleep quality. It boosts mood. It helps regulate appetite and focus. In contrast, those in dim environments or places with long gray winters often report insomnia, sluggishness, and disrupted REM cycles. The body craves light as if it were nourishment. So when you live in a land where the sun visits like clockwork, your body relaxes into its presence. The regularity becomes comfort. The predictability becomes peace. Have you ever thought about what it would feel like to wake at the same hour every day? Not because an alarm commands you, but because the light gently invites you. And what if your sleep drifted in, not as a sudden collapse, but as a soft glide into evening, the air cooling, just as your eyes grow heavy, the sky darkening in perfect coordination with your brain? That's what life under a balanced sun can offer. It doesn't erase stress or solve every problem, but it helps. It teaches your body to expect rest and teaches your mind to follow. And as you lie here now, breathing slowly, eyes closed or fluttering still, you might feel the echo of that steady sun, rising, setting, rising again. Always on time, always just enough. Feel the warmth now, not just light, but heat. Not the baking pavement melting heat of desert summers, but a more vertical kind, a focused kind, the kind that drops down from directly above and presses against your scalp, your shoulders, your arms, like a heavy whisper. When you live beneath a vertical sun, you don't just get light, you get its sharper cousin, ultraviolet radiation. Especially when that sunlight travels the shortest possible path through Earth's atmosphere straight down. Let's talk about what that means for your body. At or near the equator, the sun is rarely far from directly overhead. The angle of sunlight, especially around midday, is almost perpendicular to the ground. And with less atmospheric filtering, because sunlight has less distance to travel, UV radiation increases significantly. In fact, in many equatorial cities, the UV index regularly exceeds 11, which is considered extreme. For context, anything above 6 is where most dermatologists start to raise their eyebrows. Above 11, that's where sunlight becomes a laser artist, writing quickly onto unprotected skin. You can burn here in less than 15 minutes. And it's not just your skin that's listening. Your eyes, too, are quietly absorbing all that unfiltered brilliance. That's why people near the equator often wear sunglasses, not just for comfort, but for protection. Prolonged exposure to UV light can increase the risk of cataracts and other vision issues. Even animals in these zones develop natural shielding, dark pigmentation around their eyes, clever behaviors that help them squint at just the right time. Now imagine plants trying to survive this spotlight. They don't get to move into the shade, so instead, they adapt. Some grow thick, waxy leaves that reflect sunlight. Others develop angled foliage that minimizes direct contact during peak hours. Many tropical species have large leaves with vertical orientation, allowing light to graze them rather than pierce them. It's nature's version of turning away from a camera flash. But for humans, the story is more complicated. Skin color, for instance, is a quiet biography of sunlight. Populations that have lived near the equator for generations often evolved darker skin rich in melanin. Melanin is your body's natural sunscreen, a pigment that absorbs UV radiation and helps prevent damage. It's not perfect protection, but it's brilliant. And it's beautiful. It tells a story of ancestors who walked under that vertical sun day after day, year after year, and adapted to its kiss. But today, with global travel and migration, skin and sunlight don't always match location. Someone with fair skin might vacation in Bali or live in Nairobi and find themselves quickly overwhelmed by the sun's intensity. The UV doesn't wait. It doesn't care where you came from. It simply arrives fast, vertical, and full of intention. Which is why sun safety near the equator becomes not just a recommendation, but a rhythm. You'll notice hats everywhere, wide-brimmed ones shading faces and necks. People walk with umbrellas under blue skies, not for rain, but for light. It's common. It's wise. And it's strangely beautiful umbrellas like moving flowers dotting the streets. Sunscreen, too, becomes daily armor. SPF 30, 50, even 70. In many equatorial cities, sunscreen isn't reserved for beach days. It's an everyday routine, like brushing your teeth or tying your shoes. And still there's more, because the vertical sun doesn't just touch your skin, it seeps into your energy. Have you ever noticed how sunlight can make you feel invigorated in small doses, but exhausted in large ones? That's especially true under direct overhead exposure. The body works harder to maintain internal temperature. You sweat more. You dehydrate faster. Your muscles tire more quickly. That's why siestas or midday breaks are common across the tropics. It's not laziness, it's wisdom. A quiet agreement with the sun. You work early, you rest at noon, you return in the cooler hours. A dance with light and heat. Even cities reflect this. Markets open at sunrise and buzz until late morning. Streets go quiet by midday. Then slowly life resumes in the late afternoon as shadows reappear long and generous again. Ask yourself, how would your day change if you lived under this kind of heat? Would you shift your meals? Wake with the sun? Retreat to shade like the birds do? It makes you wonder, what is heat really when it falls from above, like a waterfall? It's not just temperature, it's pressure. A silent force that shapes habits, architecture, biology, and emotion. And yet, despite all this intensity, people thrive here. Their bodies learn, their cultures adapt, and their sleep surprisingly still finds its way. Because even after the harsh midday blaze, the equatorial evening arrives quickly. The sun, once it begins to fall, wastes no time. There is no long, slow descent, just light, then less light, then night. And in that night, the world cools. The pressure lifts, your skin breathes again. The heat unhooks its grip, and you feel the quiet relief of shadow of softness. You slip into bed with the memory of light, strong, vertical, unrelenting, and the promise that tomorrow it will return just the same. And maybe in a strange way, that promise is what makes sleep so inviting in places like this. You've felt the sun above and the heat it carries, but now let's look at what happens when all that light is suddenly blocked, not by buildings or umbrellas, but by the sky itself. Because even in the brightest, most shadowless places, the clouds are always waiting. And when they arrive, they put on a performance like nowhere else on Earth. You see, near the equator, where sunlight is at its most direct and the ground is regularly warmed with pinpoint precision, the air rises. Quickly, constantly. That heat climbs, lifting moisture with it until the sky begins to ripple and shift. And then, almost without warning, the clouds form. They don't creep in gently. They build like towers. These are cumulonimbus clouds, giants of the sky, the tallest of all cloud types. Near the equator, they grow with astonishing speed and scale, sometimes reaching 60,000 feet into the sky. That's nearly twice as high as commercial airplanes cruise. They begin as innocent, puffy cumulus clouds, but the heat lifts them like helium balloons, stretching them upward into dark, heavy columns. They gather so fast that you can watch them bloom in real time. And when they bloom, the vertical sun, so commanding just an hour ago, vanishes. The light dims. The contrast softens. The world, once flattened by direct sunlight, begins to breathe in layers again. Trees grow deeper in tone. The streets regain texture. Faces are no longer washed out. They glow with the softness of indirect light. In a way, it's a reversal. The clouds reintroduce the very shadows the sun had erased. But they bring more than shadows, they bring drama. Within those clouds, water gathers, churns, and begins to fall. A thunderstorm brews. Not a distant rumble, like in temperate climates, but a towering thunderous release. And when the rain arrives, it does so with authority. These are equatorial downpours. Sudden, heavy, precise. You might be dry on one side of the street and drenched on the other. It's a curtain of water that opens and closes with swift purpose. Have you ever tried sleeping through rain like that? For some, it's a lullaby, steady, full embracing. For others, it's a spectacle. Thunder echoing across the hills, lightning splitting the sky like a cracked mirror, rain hammering rooftops with rhythmic intensity. And then, almost as quickly as it started, it ends. The sky opens again. The sun returns. And once more it climbs to its overhead perch, burning away the moisture, resetting the stage. This daily rhythm sunshine clouds. Rain sun again is known as diurnal convection, and it's incredibly common near the equator. In cities like Singapore, Manaus, or Kinshasa, it's not unusual to have intense rainfall every afternoon, often around the same time each day. Your body begins to predict it. You plan your errands before noon. You cook lunch just as the first rumble of thunder approaches. You learn not to fear the storm, but to fold it into your schedule like a natural pause. Even animals adapt. Birds grow quiet just before a storm. Frogs call out more intensely after. The air smells of earth and heat and renewal. It's a world that breathes in tall cycles. There's something deeply comforting about this predictable wildness. In the morning, light without mercy. In the afternoon, thunder that shakes your teacup. By evening, clear skies and the faint scent of ozone, as if the storm washed the light itself. And you begin to understand that even the vertical sun needs balance, that too much intensity left unchecked is softened by the clouds, that the sky has its own rhythm, a symphony of brightness and shadow, heat and hush. Think of the cloud as nature's eyelid, blinking over the sun, giving your eyes and skin a moment to rest. Now ask yourself, what kind of sleep would you have after a storm like that? Not a gentle doze, but a deep, clean sleep, one where the static has cleared, where the air feels cooled and reset. The sound of raindrops lingers in your ears. Your muscles remember the pressure of the sun and the relief of shade. And your heart, like the clouds, lets go of what it held all day. In shadowless cities, the clouds are not an interruption. They're part of the design. They are what keeps the sun from becoming tyrannical. They offer the moment to exhale, to step back, to listen. So next time you're in a place like this and the light disappears overhead, don't run for cover just yet. Pause. Look up. Watch the sky rebuild itself. And remember that even in the brightest places, rest still comes on wings of water. Let's stay with the sky a little longer, but now wait until nightfall. You see near the equator, where the sun leaps directly overhead. At noon, it also falls with startling speed. There's no lingering twilight here. No hours of pastel sky. Just a sudden velvet drop into darkness, as if the sun exits stage left and the stars arrive right on cue. This kind of nightfall has its own character. It's not gentle, it's definite. The light fades fast within minutes. One moment you're walking in sunlit streets, and the next streetlights are flicking on, and the sky is ink. Have you ever noticed how in higher latitudes, sunset stretches endlessly? A golden hour that feels like a reward at the end of the day. Artists chase it. Lovers toast to it. But near the equator, the sun doesn't hesitate. It sets like it means it. That's because the sun here travels a shorter arc across the sky. At higher latitudes, the sun rises at an angle gliding across the horizon, but here it lifts straight up and falls straight down. The result? Day and night split the clock with incredible precision. Every day, roughly 12 hours of light, roughly 12 hours of dark. Every season. Always. That regularity might sound dull at first, but imagine how comforting it becomes. There's no wondering whether the days are getting shorter. No melancholy when the light begins to fade in winter. No manic rush to enjoy fleeting summer evenings. Here, light and darkness are equals partners in the quiet ballet of time. And with the suddenness of nightfall comes another kind of richness, the stars. Because while cities may cast their own glow, many equatorial areas, especially those in highlands or far from urban centers, offer something breathtaking once the sun disappears. The night sky opens fully. At the equator, You're perfectly positioned to view both hemispheres of the heavens. Northern and southern constellations alike are visible throughout the year. The Big Dipper and the Southern Cross. Orion rising straight, not at an angle. Scorpio stretching tall. The celestial equator itself arcs right above your head, dividing the sky like a quiet compass. You're standing at the intersection of sky maps. No other latitude gives you this balance. And here's where the storytelling begins. For thousands of years, humans living under equatorial skies have read these stars like books. The lack of seasonal extremes meant they had to find other ways to track the year. They watched the tilt of constellations the way Orion lies down in the west by May, or how the Southern Cross pivots like a clock hand. They didn't just name the stars, they built agriculture mythology and navigation from them. Even the concept of time was drawn from these night skies. The people of Polynesia, for example, navigated vast oceans using star lines' imaginary paths drawn from one horizon to another. At the equator, where the stars appear to rise and set almost vertically, these lines were clearer, more dependable. And yet, for all this cosmic significance, there's also something beautifully personal about equatorial night. The darkness is total. There's no long twilight glow to guide your sleep gently. The sun disappears, and you're enveloped. That makes bedtime feel deeper, more complete. Your brain gets a clear signal. It's night now, truly night. No guessing, no hesitation. That sharp switch from light to dark is something scientists say improves melatonin release. It's like flipping the switch in your brain's control room. Cortisol down. Serotonin begins its nightly transformation. Your body eases into softness. If you've ever felt drowsy under a sudden blanket of night, this is why. There's also something else that happens here, something quieter. When darkness arrives swiftly, evening rituals take on deeper importance. You begin to light candles earlier. You eat dinner beneath soft lamps. You gather with family, with neighbors, with friends. The world outside your window goes dark, but the inside of your life glows warmer. Time slows. The night feels like a private room. And as the sky darkens, the air shifts too. The day's heat lifts. Breezes stir. The moisture from the afternoon's rain begins to rise again. As scent. You can smell the soil, the leaves, the open night. It's as though the land is exhaling after holding its breath beneath the sun. This is when the nocturnal world awakens. Cicadas chirp like ticking clocks. Frogs begin their rhythmic percussion. Bats flutter overhead, nearly invisible. And in this concert of night, there's always a kind of security in the darkness. Not fear, not danger. Just closure. You walk out beneath the stars and feel the completeness of the day, the symmetry. The story told from sunrise to sunset and now wrapped in darkness like a soft cover. So ask yourself, what would it feel like to live in a world where night isn't a retreat, but an equal partner? Where sleep comes not as surrender, but as invitation. You'd rise with light, move through heat, pause beneath rain, and when the stars return, you wouldn't fight them. You'd follow. The day closes, not like a curtain falling, but like a hand tucking you gently into bed. And you rest fully finally, under a sky that knows your name. You've felt the rhythm of equatorial days, bright and shadowless, balanced and brief. But tonight, as you lie here, we take a gentler path through something quieter, more grounded, the plants that live their entire lives beneath this vertical sun. Imagine, just for a moment, being a leaf, not a metaphorical one, a real green leaf stretching out from a tree in the tropics. You're born into a world where the sun falls directly onto your face, not brushing in from the side, but bearing down from above like a spotlight that never moves. What do? You adapt. Equatorial plants live in a different dimension of light. Sunlight here doesn't skim the surface. It pierces, which means photosynthesis. That ancient magic of converting light into sugar happens at full throttle. That's why tropical rainforests, the lush giants of equatorial zones, are the most biologically productive ecosystems on Earth. 1 square kilometer of Amazon rainforest might contain 90,000 tons of living plant matter. Trees don't just grow, they compete, climb, stretch. It's a race to the top toward that prized vertical light. The result, a dense, layered forest. Each layer has its own rules, its own light, its own sleep. At the canopy, leaves bask in the full power of the sun. These are the sun leaves, thicker, smaller, more resilient. They sip light with care, using it efficiently, but also shielding themselves. Too much direct sunlight can cause photoinhibition, a kind of sunburn for chloroplasts. Below, in the understory, it's a different story. These shade leaves are broader, thinner, more delicate. They live in the dim light that filters down through gaps. And here's the twist. The shadowless quality of overhead light above creates a mosaic of flickering light below. It's not dark, but it's always shifting. Plants learn to dance with this dappled light. They adjust their angle. They reorient their chloroplasts. Some even fold their leaves to avoid the sun's harshest moments, reopening later, like sleepy eyelids. Have you ever seen a plant move in response to sunlight? That's heliotropism. In the tropics, some flowers turn their faces east in the morning and west by evening. Others bow under the full midday sun, like shy creatures waiting for relief. And it's not just trees and flowers adapting. Vines, epiphytes, mosses all jockey for position in this vertical world. Lianas, those thick jungle vines, wrap themselves around taller trees, climbing them like ladders to reach the light. Epiphytes like orchids and bromeliads don't even bother with roots in the soil. They live on branches, sipping moisture from the air and catching sunlight from above. This is what happens when life is ruled not by seasons, but by light direction. So much energy pours down year-round that there's no spring or fall here. Plants don't need to go dormant. They bloom when they're ready. Fruit when conditions are right. Reproduction isn't seasonal, it's opportunistic. That's why in a tropical rainforest, you can find flowers blooming every day of the year. Some trees even develop the habit of fruiting irregularly in sudden bursts known as massed events. These happen when several species fruit at once, flooding the forest, with abundance attracting animals, spreading seeds far and wide. It's a celebration of light, but it's also a challenge. With all this growth, the soil in tropical rainforests is often surprisingly poor. The nutrients don't sit in the ground, they're locked in the plants themselves. When a leaf falls or a tree dies, decomposition is almost instant. Fungi and bacteria break it down in days, even hours, and hungry roots slurp up the nutrients before they can vanish. So in a sense, this whole lush world is balancing on a knife's edge of decay and rebirth. Growth feeds growth. Death feeds life. And this balance is regulated by the clock of light. 12 hours of sun, 12 of dark, every single day. The plants don't sleep the way we do, but they do rest. They photosynthesize in daylight, and at night they respire, processing the sugars they made. It's a steady cycle. No winter break, no long nights of dormancy, just rhythm, just routine. It makes you wonder, what would it feel like to live in such a world? One where your energy didn't rise and fall with the seasons, but stayed constant. Would you grow faster, burn brighter, or would you like the plants here? Learn to conserve your strength. Reach when needed, rest when not. Even now, as you lie there, your breath has a kind of chlorophyllic calm to it, slow, steady tune to something deeper. Maybe your own rhythms mirror those leafy lives more than you realize, because beneath a shadowless sun, everything must find its own way to balance. Too much light burns, too little stunts, but in the right proportions, sun, rain, dark, breath, life expands. And so does sleep, not in a frantic collapse, but in a slow, leaf-like sigh, unfurling toward rest. Now let's drift closer to the ground, down beneath the forest, the cities, even the soil. Because here in the tropics, under the places where shadows rarely fall, something extraordinary is happening. Something so quiet, so hidden, you'd never guess it was shaping the very way people live and sleep and survive. It's the earth itself, its tilt, its bulge, its quiet mathematical eccentricity. You see, the earth isn't a perfect sphere. It's an oblate spheroid slightly flattened at the poles and puffed out at the equator. And that puff, that gentle widening of the waistline, it's not just a geometrical footnote. It affects gravity itself. At the equator, you are actually farther from the center of the Earth than you would be at the poles. Add to that the centrifugal force caused by the Earth's rotation strongest at the equator, and the result is fascinating. Gravity is weaker here. Only slightly about 0.5% less than at the poles, but enough that your body, without realizing it, might feel just a little lighter, a little freer, a little more floaty. It's not enough to send you bouncing like on the moon, but it's there, subtle and persistent, woven into the daily experience of being. And while the effect on sleep hasn't been studied deeply, you might imagine that even the smallest physical ease contributes to the softness of rest. It also affects how fluids move in the body, how the ocean hugs the planet, even how satellites must adjust their orbits. This widening belly of the Earth is not just a shape, it's a force. And if you go deeper below the soil, into the crust and mantle, this part of the world hums with geological energy. Much of the equator rests on the Ring of Fire, a massive loop of tectonic activity where plates push and pull, colliding and dancing below the surface. That means volcanoes, earthquakes. Geothermal springs a land that doesn't just receive sunlight, but generates its own power from within. In places like Ecuador, Indonesia, and Kenya, people live alongside these slow-breathing giants. Volcanoes that tower above the landscape. Some sleep, some rumble. All remind you that the earth here is alive. Have you ever felt the ground shift slightly beneath your feet? A ripple just enough to feel like a pulse in stone. It's unnerving and awe-inspiring all at once. And in equatorial zones, this is part of the fabric of life. But instead of fear, many communities develop rituals of respect. Offerings, legends, quiet watchfulness. Sleep doesn't disappear in the face of a mountain that might someday wake it, adapts. You learn to rest within the breath of the land, not apart from it. There's a special kind of resilience in that. And let's not forget another detail hiding in plain sight: day length. Near the equator, not only are day and night nearly equal, but the rate at which daylight changes across the year is astonishingly minimal. In Singapore, for example, the difference between the longest and shortest day of the year is only about 7 minutes. Compare that to Stockholm, where that difference is over 12 hours. This has profound effects not just on sleep, but on mood, mental health, and social life. People living near the equator don't experience the same seasonal mood swings. There's no winter slump, no longing for summer. Time feels steady, almost circular. Ask yourself, what would your life feel like if you didn't have to constantly adjust to seasonal changes? No moving clocks, no resetting your body, just a single stable circadian rhythm, year in and year out. That's the gift the equator gives. And yet it does so quietly. The earth doesn't shout these differences. It holds them like secrets in the soil, whispered in the patterns of plants, embedded in the strength of storms and the curve of the ocean. Even the Coriolis effect of force, created by Earth's rotation, behaves differently here. It weakens at the equator, meaning hurricanes never form directly along it. Storms must be born just slightly to the north or south. It's as if the equator itself is a line of calm in the chaotic dance of global weather, a balance point, a stillness in the spin. And you lie there on this balance line, wrapped in steady warmth, listening to the quiet strength beneath you. Maybe this is why sleep feels more natural here. Not because it's easier, but because it's supported by light, by heat, by the even breath of night, and by the subtle design of the planet itself. And so the earth slightly rounder at your feet, slightly softer beneath your bones, keeps turning. And you keep dreaming. By now your body has begun to settle into the rhythm of this place. You've wandered through its brightness and storm, its plants and sky. But what about the people who live here, those who call this shadowless city home? How does life feel when built beneath a vertical sun? Let's walk gently through a typical day. Imagine waking just before dawn, not because of an alarm, but because the light itself has a voice here. It peeks through shutters, brushes against your cheek, invites your eyes to flutter open. Outside, the air is still soft. The heat hasn't begun its climb yet. This is the quiet hour when birds rehearse their morning songs, and the city hums faintly like it's clearing its throat. You dress lightly the fabrics here, made for breath, not warmth. Cotton linen woven fibers that know how to let the wind in. The roads begin to fill slowly. At first, bicycles barefoot. Children market vendors pushing carts. Shops open early because the day will be hot. Everyone knows this. Everyone respects it. By mid-morning, the sun has taken its rightful throne in the sky, shining directly overhead. Shadows shrink to nothing. Your own silhouette disappears beneath you. The streets gleam. People retreat into shade where possible. Beneath overhangs tree canopies or inside small shops with fluttering fans. And as the sun presses down, life slows. This isn't laziness, it's adaptation. Productivity takes a different shape here. In the early hours, people are fast-focused. Then around noon they pause, eat, rest, some nap, some simply sit. It's understood that the human body, like any other creature, needs a rhythm that includes stillness. The Spanish call it a siesta, but in many equatorial cultures, it doesn't have a name. It's just the way it's always been. Even animals take part. Dogs curl up in doorways. Chickens vanish beneath stilted homes. The world waits. Then, as the afternoon clouds roll in and the thunder begins, its warm, guttural mutter movement resumes. People return to their tasks with a kind of ease, refreshed, rinsed by the storm, softened by the pause. There's a communal understanding here. Weather is not to be resisted, but woven into the day. You start to see that the vertical sun doesn't just shape light, it shapes culture. Take architecture, for example. Roofs are steep to shed rain. Eaves are long to cast precious shade. Homes are often built raised from the ground, letting air move underneath. Windows are narrow and tall, channeling breeze. Walls are thick in some regions, thin in others. Everything is a conversation with the sun. Even colors shift. You'll see bright hues on houses, not just for cheer, but because lighter colors reflect more light. Clothes, too, are chosen to bounce sunlight away, to breathe, to float. Then there are social patterns. Life is often more outdoors than indoors. Porches matter. Courtyards become living rooms. Community isn't hidden behind doors. It spills onto sidewalks, into markets, through song and shared meals. There's an openness that echoes the openness of the sky above. But at the same time, there's a deep appreciation for darkness. When night falls so quickly, it becomes precious. It's when stories are told, music rises, laughter lingers in courtyards. It's when the world cools both literally and emotionally. There's a word in many cultures for this kind of evening: lahora, tranquila, giorni njema, or simply evening time. It's a time when the outside temperature finally matches the warmth within you. When your thoughts slow and you begin to listen not to tasks but to feelings. Maybe that's when people feel most aligned here, when the heat no longer demands and the night has not yet asked you to sleep. Eventually, though, the body calls. Maybe you take a short shower, cold water, soothing skin warmed all day. Maybe you light a candle or burn incense or pull a thin sheet over your legs. And just like the sun, you drop. Sleep comes quickly in cities like this. Not because the days are easy, they aren't always, but because they are full. Your senses are satisfied. Your eyes have been drenched in light, your ears in birdsong, and thunder, your body in warmth. And without dramatic seasonal shifts, you learn to trust time. One day flows into the next like beads on a string. You don't brace for winter or long for spring. You simply live and rest and wake again. Ask yourself, what would your life look like if your environment supported your biology? So gently, would you feel more human, more animal, more alive? Maybe in these shadowless cities, that's what people have always known, that life isn't something to be conquered. It's something to be paced, felt, breathed. And in this pacing there is sleep, not as an escape, but as a rhythm, a return, a nightly reminder that rest is part of living, not separate from it. And so in homes that open to the air, on beds cooled by breeze, under skies that once blazed and now hush, the city sleeps. And so do you. Let's turn now to something more ancient, something that stretches beyond the sun and the city, the rhythms that came before all of this. Because beneath every equatorial step you take, there's a foundation laid by thousands of years of adaptation, ritual, and science, long before science was a word. Imagine standing in a rainforest clearing or on a hill overlooking a volcanic plain, long before roads or satellites or time zones. The sun passes directly above. The days are equal. The nights are sure. And people begin to notice. They begin to listen. Long before clocks or calendars, humans here began to understand the sky as a kind of living drum. And from it they built some of the most sophisticated timekeeping systems the world has ever known. Take the Maya, for example. Living close to the equator, they observed the sun's precise path, the near-perfect balance between light and dark, and built their calendar systems accordingly. The Hab, a 365-day solar calendar, was rooted in agricultural cycles, tied intimately to equatorial light. Every movement of the sun had meaning. Even their cities, like Chichen Itza, were aligned to the solstices and equinoxes. They weren't just buildings. They were sundials made of stone, where shadows, or the lack of them, signaled the passage of sacred time. And what happens when a culture begins to think of time not as a line, but as a circle? Sleep becomes part of that circle. Night is not an ending, it's a continuation. A place for dreams, for stories, for spiritual connection. And in many equatorial societies, dreams hold weight. They aren't just static images, they're messages, guides, questions the body asks when the brain is quiet enough to listen. In parts of Papua New Guinea, dreams are shared every morning as part of communal life. In some Amazonian tribes, dreams help guide decisions: when to travel, when to hunt, even whom to trust. Have you ever woken from a dream and felt like it left a fingerprint on your day? Here that fingerprint is honored, not shrugged off, and it's not just indigenous cultures. Even in modern cities near the equator, ancient rhythms still echo. Religious rituals follow the clock of the sun. In Indonesia, the call to prayer rises and falls in harmony with the day's light. In many African nations, funerals, weddings, and festivals are timed not by digital clocks, but by the position of the sun and the texture of the air. There's an intuition to it, a feeling that life doesn't need to be micromanaged when the earth already provides such a steady beat. Even health is viewed differently here. In Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine, both of which have strong roots in tropical and subtropical zones, sleep is seen as a rebalancing act. The body isn't shutting down, it's realigning. Returning to harmony with the forces around it, fire, water, wind, earth. And yes, light. In some equatorial villages, people sleep in multiple small shifts, not the typical 8-hour stretch, but segmented periods based on work, family weather, and even dreams. Some sleep early, rise for a few quiet hours of reflection or story, then return to rest. It's a rhythm older than the alarm clock, and there's no shame in sleepiness, no guilt. Sleep isn't stolen time here, it's part of the whole, like a field lying fallow after harvest or a river in its calm season. There's no rush to productivity, only respect for cycles. What might your own rhythms look like if they weren't pressed into rigid shapes? Would you sleep longer, nap more often, rise with the birds, or write poetry at 2 a.m.? What would your dreams tell you if you actually had time to listen? This is what the equator offers, not just balance in day and night, but a philosophy of rest. And though modern life buzzes louder than ever, phones and screens and deadlines, it still happens underneath this older system. You may schedule meetings on a digital calendar, but the sun still rises overhead at 6:00 a.m., exactly like it did 1,000 years ago. And when it sets fast, direct, and unapologetic, it invites you into a space that feels sacred if you let it. A space where dreams aren't just private flickers of thought, but shared living things. So tonight, maybe as you close your eyes, you'll ask yourself a question from within that circle: what am I returning to? Because sleep isn't a detour, it's the path. And every night this city without shadows waits for you to walk it again. Let's listen now, not to the skies or the earth, but to the creatures that thrive in this place, where shadows don't stretch and sunlight rains straight down. Because if humans adapt to light with hats, naps, and architecture, then animals do it with instincts as old as time. Near the equator, life is constant. There's no hibernation, no long winters to prepare for. Instead, there's a kind of ongoing performance, a dance between heat and hunger, between sunlight and stillness. Take the sunbirds, for instance. These tiny iridescent flashes of color live in the tropical canopy, darting from flower to flower with a pace that would make a hummingbird nod in respect. They're sculpted by light. Their feathers shimmer, not just with color, but with angle-dependent iridescence, meaning the vertical sun reveals their true brilliance only when it's directly overhead. Imagine that evolving not only to survive under the sun, but to be seen best by it. Then there's the leafcutter ant, a marvel of efficiency. In the Amazon and other tropical forests, they march in tireless columns, ferrying pieces of leaves many times their own weight. But did you know they often work in shifts? When the sun is at its highest, they reduce surface activity, retreating slightly to avoid the most punishing rays. Even ants know when to take a lunch break. And let's not forget the nocturnal world. The vertical sun may dominate the day, but its absence at night creates a playground for others. The tarsier, with its saucer eyes and whisper-soft hands, comes alive under the equatorial moon. Its eyes are so large, relative to its head that it can't even move them, so it turns its entire neck like an owl to follow prey. With the light so reliable, day and night, dividing time equally, these creatures know precisely when their stage opens. Other animals like jaguars or civets are crepuscular, most active at dawn and dusk, slipping between the lines of light and dark. These liminal hours are brief near the equator, so they've adapted to move with quick, stealthy purpose. Their entire hunting rhythm is based not on temperature or food availability, but on timing the shadows, catching that slim window when the world isn't too bright but not yet night. Even frogs, tiny jewel-toned amphibians, sing louder here. The coqui of Puerto Rico, the glass frogs of Ecuador, the many poison dart frogs of Central and South America, all play their part in the nightly choir. Many rely on strict circadian cues tied to the setting sun to begin their calls. Have you ever heard a tropical night? It's not silence, it's a soundscape. A lullaby of chirps, croaks, rustles, hums. The darkness doesn't quiet the world, it changes its instruments. And here's something else. Animals near the equator often have shorter gestation cycles, reproduce more frequently, and develop faster. That's because the environment allows for constant opportunity. The temperature doesn't drop, the food doesn't vanish. The cycles continue, so life keeps emerging, iterating, improving. That doesn't mean it's easy. The tropics are competitive. Predators are sharp, parasites are clever. But in this stable, unchanging photoperiod, that reliable 12-hour split, there's a foundation. A predictable rhythm that allows evolution to fine-tune behavior in extraordinary ways. Even domestic animals feel it. Chickens lay eggs with greater regularity near the equator, where daylight is consistent. Livestock exhibit more stable hormonal patterns. Pets sleep more consistently, not just from the heat, but because their circadian clocks are less confused by seasonal shifts. And you too are an animal. Your eyes are still wired to seek low light before bed. Your skin still responds to warmth. Your breathing slows when the heat fades, when the light dims. In a place like this, where every bird and beetle is timed by sun and moon, you begin to realign with that biological truth inside you. Ask yourself, when was the last time your sleep wasn't interrupted by artificial light, by clocks that ignore the sun? What if you let your body remember how animals sleep? Not from exhaustion, but from instinct. Because in this city where shadows disappear at noon, the world isn't flattened by light, it's organized by it. Each creature finds its own timing, its own lull, its own way to rest, and at the center of it all, under that unblinking sun and watchful moon, you realize something beautifully simple. Sleep is not a pause in life. It is part of the choreography. So tonight, as the cicadas trill and the frogs resume their midnight rehearsals, remember, you are not separate from this world. You are one of them, and sleep is your part in the song. Let's wander together now toward the edge of the journey, quietly, softly, into the moments that come just before sleep, when thoughts loosen and the body unbuttons its awareness. Because here in this shadowless city, even the act of falling asleep has its own character. It doesn't sneak in gently with the long dusk of northern lands. There is no lingering golden hour, no drawn-out sigh of the horizon. Instead, as you've felt, the light here vanishes with precision, like someone has turned the dial down in one smooth click. And in that click, your body knows what to do. Melatonin rises swiftly, cued by the absolute clarity of nightfall. Your core temperature begins to drop, your breath lengthens, and all around you the world follows suit. Windows dim, fans whisper. The day tucks itself away. There's no fight against the night here, no bright lights to fend off bedtime, no cultural push to delay rest. You sleep because the earth tells you in a voice of heat and silence and shadow that it is time. And this matters because humans, like all animals, are ruled by the circadian rhythm, the natural cycle of wake and rest, governed by light. And when that rhythm is supported by an environment of such consistency, sleep becomes not an interruption, but a rhythm you can trust. Imagine knowing every evening that the world around you would cool just slightly, that the noises would soften, that no unexpected chill would stir you, that the air would wrap you gently like a shawl, not too warm, not too cold. It's a kind of safety, the safety of pattern, of belonging. Even the sounds of the night change to help you rest. The day's cacophony, children's voices, scooters, the clang of pots, gives way to a softer layer. Cicadas hum, distant water trickles from gutters or jungle streams. Maybe there's a light breeze stirring the palm leaves. It's not silent, but it's a soothing kind of noise, the kind of sound that doesn't demand attention, but cradles it. Now and then, a night bird calls, a gecko chirps, a distant motorcycle buzzes and fades. But the overall tone is hushed, thick with permission to rest. In this city without shadows, sleep isn't something that needs to be earned. It's not a reward for working hard enough, or something you sneak in after the world's demands. Here, sleep is simply part of the day. It stands shoulder to shoulder with waking, one half of the whole. Even in bustling cities like Nairobi, or Jakarta, or Manaus, you'll find that people move differently at night. Markets close, doors are drawn, streets grow sparse, the heat releases its grip, the language of the body changes, voices grow lower, gestures slower. It's as if everyone is being rocked not by lullabies, but by the rhythm of the earth itself. And you've traveled through light and thunder plant and cloudbird and time. You've stood beneath a sky that doesn't lean, but hovers pressed directly above like a giant glowing watch face. You've seen the way this kind of sun sculpts a city, a life, a way of sleeping. So now, as your eyes begin to close, ask yourself, what would it feel like to rest without guilt? What would it feel like to sleep as naturally as a tree photosynthesizes or as a frog sings in the dark? What if sleep isn't something you do, but something you return to like a familiar place? Because here in this shadowless place, that's exactly what it is. A return to balance, to stillness, to that quiet, even breath that lives just under the surface of everything. So drift now gently as the last warmth of the day fades from the floorboards and the ceiling fan turns lazy loops above you. Let the steady dark wrap around your limbs, as sure and even as the days are long. You've earned nothing, because nothing needs to be earned. Here sleep is not the end. It is the next chapter in a cycle that never truly stops. And now, my friend, we come to the softest part of the night. You've walked with me through a place where the sun hangs directly above, where shadows vanish, and the rhythm of life settles into something slow, certain, and deeply grounding. You've felt the warmth of days that don't stretch, but stand, and the darkness that doesn't creep but arrives. Let your breath fall into step with that balance now, in and out. Let it be as steady as the 12 hours of light and 12 hours of dark that define this timeless equatorial rhythm. No rushing, no grasping, just being. The world outside your eyelids is quiet now. The leaves have stopped their murmuring. The heat has finally folded itself into the earth. Somewhere far away, the last call of a night bird echoes and fades. It's safe now. It's soft now. Let your muscles loosen like vines after rain. Let your thoughts flutter down like sunbirds settling in the trees. You don't need to hold anything. You don't need to do anything. Here in this city without shadows, there is space to simply rest. Sleep tonight is not a door closing, it's a window opening. Opening into calm, into comfort, into a deeper layer of yourself, the part that remembers how to sleep as easily as a tree remembers how to grow. If you've enjoyed this journey, I'd be quietly grateful if you'd give this video a like or tap that subscribe button for more peaceful explorations with the sleepy scientist. It helps more than you might imagine. And before you drift off, I'd still love to know, where in the world are you listening? From what time it is there? Leave a comment if you're feeling cozy enough to share. It's always a quiet joy to see this sleepy little community ripple across time zones and continents. Good night, sweet dreams.